Gene England of C.R. England Trucking, the President Emeritus and son of the founder of C.R. England Trucking. Thank you so much for being part of Three Questions.
Thank you.
Your father, Chester R. England, started this trucking company, his trucking company, in 1920, hauling potatoes up in Cache Valley. Since that time, a lot has changed with not only the company, but the industry as well. What kinds of things are different now in trucking than they were back when your father started this whole thing?
It'd be very hard to imagine the difference. It's so big, so different. When we were early on running over to Wyoming, after we did the Cache Valley business, then we went into Wyoming. My brother Bill and I were going over to Rock Springs with 100 bags of potatoes on a flatbed truck. They hadn't surfaced the road all the way to Rock Springs.
Oh, no.
In 1934. There was a detour. After we left Lyman, they took us down through a ditch. And as we went through that ditch on the detour, our load slipped off.
Oh, no. The whole thing?
It was, well, almost all of it. It split the tarp right down the middle, and there the stuff is on the ground. Bill was 3.5 years younger than I. I was 14 years old. Yes, 14, driving the truck.
Yeah, it was legal back then.
We worked all, I had an Idaho driver's license.
Oh, there you go.
It was legal. We worked all night getting that load back on there. A car didn't go by. This is Highway 30. Highway 30 that 80 runs along now. Mm-hmm. It's nothing but a belt of trucks, and mostly trucks, coming. And at that time, that shows you the difference in traffic.
Mm. So you were all alone overnight trying to get those potatoes back on that truck?
I don't know how many hours, but we worked almost all night doing it. Mm. We got it back on, and then the next morning we were in Rock Springs delivering those potatoes.
Now, you mentioned your brother Bill, who passed away several years ago, a couple of years ago now, I guess, in 2000.
He lived to be 95, yes.
95. You've got some good genes in your family.
We do.
Now, you and your brother Bill joined your father after World War II in 1946 in the trucking business. Now, when you did that, the two of you ran that business after your dad retired. Did you have any idea that C.R. England Trucking would become as big as it has become?
No. No idea. It was a kind of a miracle.
How so?
It was so young. The business was so young. Trucking, continental trucking, transcontinental trucking was just, it hadn't started yet, really. And when we got going and got a hold of some good customers, it started to grow and expand. And it's been a wonderful, wonderful business.
Now, in 1946, the interstate highway system did not exist yet.
It did not.
And so when the interstate highway system finally did come into existence, what did that mean for C.R. England Trucking and for other trucking companies as well?
It meant an entirely different route, an easier route to travel. When we, in 1955, when we made our first trip to the East Coast, to Boston, we would run on 2-lane highways to Chicago. Then we'd get on the pikes that would take us on into New York and Philly. The
turnpikes, yeah.
Yes. They were there at that time, and we'd go into Boston on those turnpikes up there. So it made a lot, our speed was so much better on those pikes.
Yeah.
Where you don't have cross traffic bothering you and all that stuff.
You remember what you were hauling?
We were hauling produce to begin with. We didn't have authority to haul a good high-pay freight. We were what was called an exempt carrier. And at that time, you could only haul produce, fish, fishery products, and poultry. I think that was about the main things. And so we were hauling a lot of Long Island ducklings out of Long Island back to the West Coast. That was one of the items we had, and we hauled a lot of fish.
How long would it take your trucks to get from Boston back to the West Coast?
We started in 1950. Well, it was a little later than that when we put on the offer that we would deliver 72 hours from the West Coast to Philly and New York.
Now that's almost unheard of in that day, correct?
Oh yes, it was a two-man driving team. They drove constantly, and they tried to do it. They tried to get there. They wanted to do it.
Yeah. How successful were you? Were you able to keep the promise of 72 hours?
Yes, we were.
And what did that do for your business?
Well, I think it was part of a lot of things that that made us kind of known as someone that the shipper could depend on. That we were somewhat of a different company.
Yeah, it sounds like you were
We loved what we were doing.
real players in the trucking industry.
Yes, we were.
Now, a moment ago, you mentioned the ICC, the Interstate Commerce Commission, and the authorities and the authority to ship certain kinds of goods. Tell us about the struggle that C.R. England had in increasing its authority to haul different kinds of things.
Yes, I think the ICC was regulated trucking. I think came into action in about 1932. And what they did, they went in and grandfathered the companies who were serving the public at that time. We didn't get any of that grandfather because we were not a carrier. We were a produce dealer, more so. And so we were left with just the exempt commodities that we could haul. So we immediately realized we had to get the authority to haul a better freight. And so I found an attorney in Washington by the name of Dan Johnson who made an attempt to help us. We would apply for authority, and we would have to go to a hearing and meet the other carriers who protested all the time. They didn't want us in the business. And that nonsense went on until 1980.
Wow.
And but in 1980, they finally realized this isn't going to work. This regulation, it's costing the public so much money and foolishness. And so the old adage of competition is the best regulator came into play. And my son Dan, I'd encouraged him to be a transportation attorney. He was trying his first case in Washington.
Was it this case?
And it was a case, no, it was a case where we were trying to, we were tacking, they called it, with carriers that had authority, and we would haul their freight. If we went over their lines, we paid them a percentage to haul it. In this hearing, the judge who was listening to this, about 6 competing carriers were there protesting us. And in the process, they found out that one of the regulated carriers that we were working with he didn't really have the authority that he said he had. And we were running illegally, I suppose. Anyway, the other competing carriers, they said, let's have a fitness hearing on England. And this judge, he went right for it. Yeah, we're gonna hear what these guys are doing. And so that evening, I remember being in Washington, and Dan on his first trial at this, we felt like we'd probably blown the company.
Oh, dear.
We thought they'd kill us for sure. But the funny thing about it, they were so near to deregulation at that time that within a few weeks they granted us exactly what we asked for.
Wow.
So it was off and running, and we'd been needing this help for us, and we were hungry, and we were pretty efficient.
I'll bet you were. With that new authority, I guess the company then just flourished, and you were off to the races.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's go back in time just a little bit, back to World War II. Now, you fought in World War II, correct?
Right.
Now, as a U.S. soldier, I hear you were able to save $5,000 somehow on a soldier's salary, which, by the way, I looked it up. $5,000 in 1945 was the equivalent of $71,266.11 today. Now, you saved that money so you could buy your very first truck, your big rig, when you got back. Is that correct?
I went in the service with the determination that I was going to come home with some money in order to get a truck and get started. So I was diligent.
So how did you save that money?
Well,
on a soldier's salary?
To begin with, I had a new car, and I leased it when I was in California. I let some of the local people $100, they could have a new car and drive back to home on a 5-day pass. Mm-hmm. So I'd get $100 for the use of my car, and that started the savings going. But the real place where I was able to do pretty well was when we were overseas. They issued cigarettes
to the soldiers.
To the soldiers.
Yeah.
At one time, I think it was at least 3 packs a week, maybe more.
Oh my!
And those people over there that we were matched with were the locals. They wanted these cigarettes worse than I did.
Because you don't smoke, correct?
Don't smoke.
So you had no use for them.
But as a result, I came home with that $5,000.
That truly is an astounding amount of money at that time.
You know, it seems so scant now, but it was quite big in those days, yes.
And you bought your truck?
We bought the first big truck we could find at Kenworth. Mm-hmm. The Utah Concrete Pipe had. It was a 40 model, and it was now 46. Mm. And see, the services had taken all the production. There was no new trucks available.
Yeah, because of the war.
In fact, it was 1950 before we get the first new truck.
Oh, wow.
But after that, pretty good. Mm.
Now, your brother Bill didn't drive truck nearly as much as you did. You've got like well over 1 million miles behind the wheel of a big rig going back and forth across this country. What is it you love about driving trucks so much?
It was a way to accomplish what I wanted to do. And my dad was an entrepreneur, he loved making a deal. Didn't matter what the deal was, he was there to do it, and he was always looking for opportunities. And I guess I inherited that same kind of attitude. But I've loved being able to purchase land where we needed it, and it's been one of the assets to the company to find land that served us and is now appreciated to good prices.
You started out driving truck, is that correct?
That's
and
correct.
So you were behind the wheel of a big rig quite a bit, weren't you?
Yes.
In fact, you were driving big rig until just a few years ago, is that not correct?
Well, until 1990.
Yeah.
Then my sons called me in one particular day,
Yeah.
said, "Dad, we believe you're a good driver, but we think you ought to quit." And I said, "Well, my CDL is good for another year and 2 months, and I want to run it out."
And?
Well, the next morning, the attorney met me,
Oh,
our
dear.
attorney.
Yeah.
He said, "Gene, if you got into an accident at your age, you'd be wrong no matter who was wrong." And I said, "Well, okay, I'll give up." I gave my truck to Jeff, my oldest son.
Oh. What is it that you love about driving a truck?
There's something about a big truck that gives you a feeling you don't get in a car. It's and you have to be some kind of a guy that this appeals to you.
Yeah.
I know that it's a little bit unusual to be a guy that loves trucks.
Not all that unusual. But what was it that turned your key? What was it that, I got to keep doing this. I love doing this.
It was my dad that he showed me, "Hey, you can go out and do this." And he taught me how to sell product and deal with grocers and deal with the farmer to buy his product. And I learned those things, and I wanted to do it. And I think it might have been childhood abuse because I was so young. But what an opportunity it was for me to learn something that I like to do.
Now, I hear tell that you have well over 1 million miles
Oh, yes.
behind the wheel of a big rig. Is there any place in this country that you have not driven a big rig to?
There's certainly are some, yes, but I've been to a lot of them. I know a lot of the off ramps where we want to go.
Yeah. And so do you even need a map anymore when you're taking a truck somewhere?
Well, I haven't been taking a truck for a few years now,
Yeah.
but
I guess GPS
I think,
now.
yes, the assistance you get from the telephones now,
Yeah.
what a blessing it is for drivers
Yeah.
to be able to plug in where they're going and be able to go there under the proper direction. See, there's so many cases out on the East Coast where a truck as high as these big rigs are now, you go under there and you lose the top of your trailer.
Yeah, it's not going to work.
And we did a lot of that.
Oh.
We rebuilt a lot of trailers.
Oh, did you? Did you lose a lot of trailers that way?
Well, we had to rebuild them. We didn't throw them away.
Yeah.
We'd pull them back here and have our shop over here rebuild the things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As you have driven back and forth across this country in a big rig, what have you learned? What has it taught you about the United States of America?
That we have the most beautiful country in the world. And it's beautiful in so many ways. You know, you leave the beautiful green on the East Coast, and you get out and you go through the farmlands and then the desert lands, and there is so much to love about this country. Yes, we've got the greatest land in the world.
And what about the people?
I think the United States of America has made an impression on the world by what we've done. And I don't think there's another country that has been as effective in letting people know we're the USA. We have freedom here. And what a blessing that is.
Driving a long-haul truck can be hard on your family life. Now, you and your wife, June, have raised 6 boys who are now operating the company for you. How did you balance driving long-haul truck and your family at the same time?
That's hard. Number one, you need a wife that is supporting you, and you need what I found that I never had any more joy in my life than I did as a boy going with Dad, doing his thing. And it was the same way with my sons. I reminisce now about the times when we took a vacation to go on the truck to California or East Coast or wherever we went. We wouldn't take them out of school, but when the time was right, we would get them, and June went along with me. Mm-hmm. What a person she was. She was a mother that they loved dearly. Mm.
And now, at CR England, how do you encourage your drivers to balance their work and family lives? How do you help them to do that?
We encourage them every way we can to plan their life and see that the family is taken care of. Now, I would hope that those children realize that when their father is out away on a truck, that he's doing a lot of things for their benefit. And we have lots of them. And so many good people that have good families that are able to live with that kind of a life and make it successful.
Mm. I would imagine that now with insurance the way it is and attorneys and the litigious society we live in, you can't take the kids with you in the truck anymore. Is that the case?
Well, we still do some of that.
Really?
Yes. If they're authorized, if we authorize them and make arrangements, we can do that.
Well, that's good. That's a good way to stay close as a family of a trucker.
It is.
Now, I had a cousin who worked for CR England. He passed away several years ago, just a young kid. And I call him a young kid. He wasn't that young. But at any rate, his job was to talk to the drivers around the country by radio at night to just check on them, make sure they're doing okay, and make sure they're staying awake and they're staying within the regulations for mileage and sleep and that kind of thing. I had no idea that that kind of a program existed. Where did that come from? Is CR England the only one that does that?
No, I think it's the telephone communication is so important every way that it comes. My oldest son, Jeff, who has Pride Transport, he does a certain thing with his people. He calls them on their birthday. And You know, what we need to do is to try to understand each other, and I'm sure psychiatry is, if you can appeal to the man's thinking, it has a lot of assets in bringing him into the picture in a way that he does the most for you and for himself as well. So let's look forward to new and better things ahead.
In 24 days from today, you are going to turn 100 years old.
Yes.
Now, what is, and I consider you to be one of the foremost authorities on this because of the smile on your face and your longevity. What is the secret to a long, happy life?
Well, it's enjoying, I think, number one, a positive attitude. Look forward to doing things positively. I think it's nice to love people, to be friendly, to visit, I enjoy so much visiting with people that have been with us for 20, 30, even 40 years. We have a group of drivers who have run at least 1 million miles without accident.
Wow.
We have some of them that have achieved 4 million miles without accident.
Oh, my.
And there's nothing more pleasing to me than to chat with those guys, and as we have that 1 million mile meeting as new ones come on, it's one of the real pleasures of our business, is to visit them, and they each get 1,000 for each new million.
That's a pretty good incentive.
That's a little bonus.
Yeah, that's good incentive. Now, here you are, a centenarian. You are President Emeritus of C.R. England, and still, most days, we will find you at work, at the company.
Yes.
Why are you doing that?
You know, I've found that life where you have something to do is so much more pleasant. I can't seem to do just sit around and not do something that doesn't please me.
And so what do you do when you go into work?
Well, I have a little leasing company, GB Leasing. That was Gene and Bill. That we started about 15 years ago, leasing vehicles to our own employees. And we have done that. We have now about 650 lease cars out to our employees. And I have a staff of, 5 people that we do that, and that gives me a little something to do too.
Over your career, C.R. England has grown to be the largest refrigerated carrier in the country. And you went from just a few employees to now hundreds and hundreds of employees all over the place. Through that time, you must have learned something about leadership. Tell me what makes a good leader.
You know, I remember as I was going in the service, I applied to be an officer trainee and go to officer training school. And I remember the officer that was interviewing me said, how would you characterize your life in school up to now? Would you call yourself a leader, or what would you call yourself? Well, I wanted to be an officer, so I told him, yes, I think I was a leader. I hope that has proven true.
What advice would you give leaders today in leading other people successfully?
It's a complicated thing, isn't it? It's a sure way to success, or one of the assists to be a sure way. It isn't always a sure way, but I think trying to be a personality that is open to suggestion, open to conversation, always free to talk to anybody.
Approachable.
Yes.
Is it necessary for a leader to love his people or her people?
I think you almost have to. I think it's, love is, I remember a close friend of mine here in Salt Lake, Bob Condi, and I we were taking a bus out to one of our schools in Ohio, and we had a little trouble with the back of the trailer, the bus. It was a school bus, but it was painted England colors, and we were over in Wyoming, and we were pulled into a Walmart store. There were a lot of trucks coming in there, parking there and so on. And I was down under the truck, and one of our old-time truckers came along and says, "Hey, Gene, is that you under there?" Bob Condi never forgot that.
To find Gene England under one of his own trucks, seeing what the trouble is.
Yeah.
Troubleshooting. So a good leader has to be a troubleshooter.
I think so.
Yeah. As you approach your 100th birthday, what advice and words of wisdom would you give to the upcoming generation?
I'll say something that I put on the card that's going out to all my grandchildren, great-great-grands and all of them. It said, "Goodness is a route to happiness." And I think that's right. If you try to do the good thing, it makes life so much better.
I don't think I've heard more wise words in more a succinct way than goodness is the route to happiness.
Thank you.
Well, Gene England, son of the founder of C.R. England Trucking and President Emeritus of that esteemed trucking company, thank you so much for being part of Three Questions.
It's been a pleasure, Bob.